We have to ask the question, what is more sacred, the bank or the church? What is more sacred, the school or the prayer house? When you build a bank, you can build infrastructure for that entire community. It is the bank that creates the community, not the church.
I disagree with the doctor. The black church, since we got here off the boat, has been the central force in moving African Americans forward in this country. And what we need to do is rally around the black church and uplift our people. You can't build a community around a bank. Please. And
$14 million every Sunday, no import export industry. Give me a break.
Get that $14 million from
give me a break. All the money we give the church and we don't have no infrastructure, that is absolutely unacceptable.
100 years later, how do we actually turn these things into some actual effective strategy, effective organization? How do we get something tangible out of what we've been talking about?
I'm going to start off and I'm going to let my elder conclude it. First, let's look at the statistics. $600 million is what we spent this year on McDonald's, $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on alcohol, $9 billion on weave and perm. We bought 3 times as many Mercedes Benzes as white folk, but we only control 1/3 of the wealth that they control. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Christmas bill was $3 billion. Detroit Christmas bill was $4 billion. New York City's black Christmas bill this year was $8 billion. So for me, when we talk about what we need to do next, going back to the Garvey program, Mr. Garvey, around the time of his death, was working on a central black bank to finance the infrastructure for the black community and the government of African people. I think that's where we go next. It only costs $250,000 to start a credit union. You can start a small bank with $1 million. I think we have to change the narrative in the black community that says the black church is the center of black life. I disagree with that now. The black church is still important, but it can no longer be the center. Because although they have churches in white neighborhoods and although they have churches in Chinese communities, they're Christians too, they're Muslims too, okay? They have the synagogues in the Jewish neighborhood. But their religious institution is not necessarily the center. Their financial institution is. We have to ask the question, what is more sacred, the bank or the church? What is more sacred, the school or the prayer house? When you build a bank, you can build infrastructure for that entire community. It is the bank that creates the community, not the church. And with black people putting $14 million in the church every Sunday, today's Sunday, and this is a New Year's Sunday. So I would believe that we probably put in more than $14 million a day, probably twice that amount. And we get very little on our return. So not to slight the church at all, but I believe that going into the next year, the banking and building banks and credit unions is where we should be putting our muscle at, because as Mr. Garvey said, we can only save our people through a solid economic foundation. If you cannot feed, clothe, or house African people, why are we expecting them to be loyal to us? We have this house Negro phenomenon. We have this sellout thing. Why do African people have more sellouts than any other community in America? Because we're the only community who does not provide for its own. It's easy to be loyal when your people look out for you. A Chinese kid is going to love China. Chinese look out for them. A Jewish kid is going to love Israel. The Israeli community looks out for them. An African-American child is likely to end up being loyal to any other community but his own, because we don't hire him, we don't educate him, we don't employ him, we don't empower him, we don't protect him from the police, we don't protect him from miseducation. So I believe that the narrative must go away from religious empowerment to economic empowerment.
All right, Dr. Johnson, we had a question on social media. Someone was asking, can you tell them about your educational background, and your degrees and all that
Let me do that. And the reason that question is being asked because one of my attackers has alleged that I did not have the credentials that I had. So that's where this is coming from. So my undergraduate degrees, which are 3, I got from Millersville University of Pennsylvania, a Bachelor of Science in Political Science and a Bachelor of Science in Psychology. I also earned my first master's in school psychology from Millersville University. This is Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My second master's degree was from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, PA. That's in educational leadership, and I have a principal certificate along with that. My third master's and my doctorate are both from the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Philadelphia. It's an American Psychological Association approved program, one of the top programs on the East Coast. And if anyone questions my credentials, they can call the white universities, all three of them, and ask the white people if I have my paperwork.
All right. We've got Pierre from Indianapolis, who has been on hold for 2 hours and 41 minutes and 40 seconds. Pierre.
3 quick points. First point is you give those callers from Boston and whatever, you give them whole sections, man, and that's too much time.
You got to call in early. You got to call in you got to call like 12:50.
I was one of the first callers, but moving on. Second point, I disagree with the doctor. The black church, since we got here off the boat, has been the central force in moving African Americans forward in this country. And I would challenge him to look at the black diaspora throughout the world, Brazil, Europe, anywhere. And African Americans are by far doing better than anybody else. And what we need to do is rally around the black church, wherever your church is or whatever kind of church it is, and uplift our people. You can't build a community around a bank. Please. And that's just one of the things I said. And
communities are built around banks every day. In fact, when they want to gentrify black community, the first thing they do is bring in a bank and finance all the institutions that go around it. And I agree with you that for the first 200 years, the black church was our foundation. But in the past 50 years, the black church has not done anything of substance since Dr. King's murder to change the political economic reality of black folk. If you're telling black people that the black church is our salvation, we will have no salvation. $14 million every Sunday, no supermarket. $14 million every Sunday, no schools. $14 million every Sunday, no manufacturing sector. $14 million every Sunday, no import-export industry. Give me a break. Give me a break. All the money we give the church and we don't have no infrastructure, that is absolutely unacceptable. Creflo Dollar just got a $32 million jet. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Right, Pierre, we're at a show.
With a white Jesus on top of that. Are you kidding me?
We're at a show. We're at a show. I should have done that earlier. That was entertaining. All right, so Ross Marvin, Dr. Johnson, give out your contact information, how people can get in.
When nothing was wrong with them. Are white folks off the hook? Hell no, because it was white folks who created the culture. It was white folks who created the system. It was white folks who created the atmosphere. So the black cop that shoots a black man is carrying out the orders of the white power structure. Deal with the institution, not the individuals. Now, black on black crime, a big problem.